Hello and welcome back to the English Education Lab podcast, the podcast on all things English language learning, with your host, Carolina. Today, we are going to be diving deep into the question of time. How long does it actually take to master the English language? All right, now this is one of the most common questions I hear as an ESL teacher. And while I'd love to give a quick, simple answer, the reality, as you've probably already guessed, is unfortunately much more complex. But don't worry, I'm here to break it down for you today. So let's get into the nitty-gritty, or all of the details. My friends, language learning is truly a complex and multifaceted process, and it's influenced by so many different factors, including individual differences, learning methods, as well as environmental conditions, among others. Though there may not be a straightforward answer, I promise that I will do my best to cover all the variables and provide a scientifically grounded understanding of the time it actually takes to learn the English language. All right, let's get started. Language acquisition or language learning, the learning of a language, is not just about memorizing vocabulary and grammar rules. I'm sure you already know that. It involves developing skills in actually 4 core areas: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And each of these components requires different cognitive and practical skills. So for instance, while listening and speaking primarily engage auditory and verbal skills, reading and writing focus on visual recognition and textual expression. So this complexity means that mastering English requires a comprehensive approach that addresses all of these areas simultaneously. Now, to really gauge progress, something called the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, or CEFR, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in later podcast episodes. The CEFR categorizes language proficiency into 6 basic levels: A1, A2, B1, B2, and C1 and C2. So these levels range from beginner, A1, to what we would consider near native fluency, C2 level. The time it takes to move through these stages can vary widely depending on several factors, including the learner's background, environment, and of course, dedication. Now let's take a closer look at the factors influencing language learning. Let's begin with your current language proficiency. First, we take a look at A1 level, which is basically starting from scratch, which can be very challenging, but also very rewarding, because at this stage, learners typically experience rapid progress as they acquire basic vocabulary and grammar. This phase often involves learning how to introduce yourself, ask simple questions, and understand basic sentences. So typically A1 language learners often appear to learn new information far faster than B2 learners or above for a variety of reasons. First of all, let's take a look at simpler concepts at A1 level. At the A1 level, learners are introduced to basic vocabulary and grammar. These foundational elements are relatively straightforward and often have direct equivalence in the learner's native language. So the simplicity of the content makes it easier to grasp and memorize, which gives the impression of faster learning. Another key reason is high initial progress. Early stages of language learning involve significant milestones, such as learning common phrases, numbers, and everyday vocabulary. Of course, motivation and enthusiasm is another reason. A1 learners are often highly motivated and experiencing the excitement of learning a new language and making quick, visible progress. This motivation can enhance the speed of learning. We've also got a limited scope. A1 learners are typically focused on a narrower range of topics and language functions. They're not yet dealing with those complex grammar, idiomatic expressions, or nuanced vocab, making the learning process typically much more straightforward. We're also taking a look at the cognitive load. If you look at B2 learners or above, they deal with more complex language structures, idiomatic language, and advanced grammar. The information that they are learning is more detailed and nuanced. It requires deeper cognitive processing. So as learners progress, the concepts typically become more abstract, making the learning process slower and more challenging. And finally, last but not least, and something that we've discussed in previous episodes, the plateau effect. At the B2 level, learners may experience a plateau where noticeable improvements are harder to achieve. The language skills required at this stage are more advanced, such as mastering subtleties in tone, understanding cultural references, and of course, refining fluency. This can make learning feel slower compared to the rapid progress at the A1 level. In summary, the rapid progress seen in A1 learners is due to the simplicity and basic nature of the language they are learning, combined with high initial motivation and the limited scope of material. In contrast, B2 and above are tackling more complex and nuanced aspects of the language, which naturally takes more time to master. And of course, once you reach advanced levels of language learning, the C1, C2 level, this is akin to climbing a steep hill. So at this level, learners really need to master the nuances of the language, including idioms, advanced grammar points, cultural references. Achieving near native fluency requires not only a deep understanding of the language's rules, but also the ability to use English naturally and spontaneously in diverse contexts. Moving on to more factors that influence language learning is your language background. So what do we mean by that? One of the most significant factors affecting the ease of learning English is how similar it is to your native language. For instance, speakers of Germanic languages like German or Dutch, or Romance languages like Spanish or French might find it far easier to learn English due to shared vocabulary roots and grammatical structures. On the other hand, speakers of languages that are structurally different from English, such as Chinese, Japanese, or Arabic, may face a steeper learning curve. Another thing to consider is your previous language learning experience. If you've already learned a second language, especially one that shares similarities with English, you might find it easier to pick up English. Your brain has already adapted to learning new linguistic patterns, which can of course make the whole process a whole lot smoother. Another factor is the learning environment. Now, there is a reason why immersion is often hailed as the fastest way to learn a language. Living in an English-speaking country can significantly accelerate learning because of the constant exposure to the language in everyday situations. So whether you're shopping, socializing, or working, you are continually practicing and reinforcing what you've learned. Another aspect of your learning environment is classroom versus self-study. So both classroom instruction and self-study have their advantages. Structured courses provide a solid foundation covering grammar, vocabulary, and conversation skills in a systematic way. However, self-study often offers flexibility, allowing you to learn at your own pace and focus on areas where you need the most improvement. Again, the best approach often combines both methods supplemented with immersive experiences. Another factor to consider is learning methods. The method you choose can greatly influence the speed and effectiveness of your learning. Traditional methods such as rote memorization of vocabulary and grammar rules are typically less engaging and can lead to slower progress. In contrast, interactive methods such as using language apps, participating in online courses, or engaging in conversational practice with native speakers or a private teacher can accelerate learning. These methods make use of modern technology and often incorporate gamification, real-life scenarios, and instant feedback, which help reinforce learning. Finally, we take a look at individual differences. Language learning is not solely about exposure and practice. It also involves cognitive processes such as memory, problem solving, and pattern recognition. So people with strong memory and cognitive abilities may just find it easier to retain new vocabulary, understand complex grammar rules, and apply them in conversation. And last but not least, when we're talking about individual differences, and this is a big one, we are looking at motivation and goals. I think this is perhaps the most crucial factor in language learning. Learners who are highly motivated and set clear, achievable goals tend to make faster progress. Whether your goal is to travel, work, or study in an English-speaking country, having a clear purpose can drive you to invest the necessary time and effort into learning. After 26 plus years of teaching English as a second language, I can assure you that those students who come into this experience and into this journey with a clear goal, who have set out clear, concise, and as I said before, achievable, feasible goals, and who stick to their schedule, tend to see faster progress. So, my friends, before you embark on this journey, ask yourselves what your goals truly are. What are you setting out to achieve? The clearer you can be, the more concise you can be, the more effective this language learning journey will be. Enlist the help of your English language tutor or teacher to help you create a learning plan, help you discuss your goals and how you can best achieve them. Finally, a little bit of information on time estimates based on research. As we said, while it's impossible to provide an exact timeline for learning English, the information I'm about to give can hopefully offer a rough estimate of what your language journey might look like. Research from the Foreign Service Institute, or FSI, of the U.S. Department of State provides a general guideline on how long it takes to learn English, especially for speakers of closely related languages. According to the FSI, it takes about 600 to 750 class hours to reach professional working proficiency. We're talking about B2 level in a Category 1 language. These are languages that are closely related to English: Danish, Dutch, French, Italian, Norwegian, Portuguese, Romanian, Spanish, and Swedish. However, these estimates are truly based on intensive study schedules and can, of course, vary based on individual factors mentioned above. Now, for basic proficiency, A1 to A2 level, it typically takes 2 to 3 months with consistent daily practice. That means about 5 to 10 hours per week to reach a basic level of proficiency. At this stage, learners can understand and use familiar everyday expressions and very basic phrases. To reach intermediate proficiency level B1, B2, that requires generally 6 to 12 months with regular practice, 10 to 15 hours per week. Learners at this stage can understand and express themselves in more complex situations, although they may still make frequent mistakes. And finally, achieving advanced proficiency, we're talking about C1, C2 level, requires at least 1 to 2 years or more with intensive practice, meaning 15 to 20 hours per week. At this level, learners can express themselves fluently and spontaneously without much obvious searching for expressions, and they can understand almost everything they hear or read. Now, my friends, this is a very rough estimate. I don't want you to hold on to this as though it were a black and white rule. As we mentioned above, there are so many factors involved in the speed at which you learn and how effective your language learning experience actually is. So this is a very rough estimate that might just give you an idea of what your language journey might look like. At the end of the day, it is very, very different for each and every language learner. It's important to recognize that language learning is not a linear process. Unlike a race with a clear finish line, learning a language is more like an ongoing journey with peaks, valleys, and plateaus. At times, progress may seem slow or non-existent. As we said before, very often after the B2 level, it feels like you are really slowing down. However, these plateaus are a natural part of the learning process. During these periods, your brain is simply consolidating knowledge, even if it doesn't feel like it. It's similar to building a house. Sometimes the construction seems to stall, but in reality, the foundation is just being strengthened, ensuring that future progress is stable and secure. So have a little faith, my friends. You have to slowly and securely build something in order to create something wonderful. Moreover, language learning extends beyond just linguistic skills. It involves cultural understanding and the ability to use language in context. For instance, humor, idioms, and cultural references in English requires much more than just knowing the words. It requires an understanding of the cultural background that gives those words meaning. This cultural insight allows learners to grasp subtleties such as sarcasm, double meanings, or even the emotional weight certain phrases carry. Without this cultural layer, communication might remain superficial, missing the depth and richness that makes language truly come alive. And that, my friends, takes time. That doesn't happen overnight. So don't rush it, take your time, and have faith that you will get there. In a nutshell, there is no one-size-fits-all answer to how long it takes to learn English. The time required depends on a multitude of factors, including your starting proficiency, native language, learning environment, methods used, and of course, the big one, personal dedication. While some learners may achieve proficiency in a few months, others might take several years to reach advanced levels. The key is to stay motivated, use effective learning strategies, and immerse yourself in the language as much as possible. It's also essential to set realistic goals, celebrate those small victories, and recognize that learning a language is a marathon and not a sprint. Consistent effort and practice will lead to mastery over time. Now, if you are thinking about embarking on your own English language journey, but you feel a little lost and need a little extra help, I am here to offer you that guidance. If you are looking for an experienced ESL teacher to help you along your path and give you the guidance that you need, head on over to englisheducationlab.net. Take a look at the kind of courses that are on offer. And of course, book your free 20-minute trial lesson whereby we can discuss your language learning goals and needs and create a language learning plan specifically catered to your needs and your goals. My friends, I wish you a wonderful week and happy learning. Please tune in to next week's episode of the English Education Lab podcast.